What's up, guys? Welcome to the Peer Review Podcast. My name is Caleb Davis.
And my name is Brett, and we have some notes for today. It's great to see all of you back here on the Peer Review Podcast. Thank you for joining and tuning in. Today, we're going to be covering 3 different topics. We're going to go into Michigan State versus Ohio State, Michigan versus Minnesota, and then the Detroit Lions versus the Seattle Seahawks Monday Night Football game. It's a great game. All 3 of them were great, and we got some interesting takeaways we're going to discuss here in a moment. So, Caleb, tell us, what do you think your initial thoughts were from the Michigan State and Ohio State game? I know, sadly, Michigan State wasn't able to pull it off, but as we know, Ohio State, sadly, is still the perennial powerhouse we kind of assumed they would be. But give us some of your insights.
Yeah, I could kind of start us off. So, just for reference, the score of that game was 38-7, and it ended up in an Ohio State W. And I just want to start off by saying, yes, it was a blowout, but I don't think the score was entirely indicative of how the game went. Michigan State was in it in the first, I would say, quarter and a half. Like, they were fighting. They had a lot of opportunities, but I think the story of this game was our turnovers, and it was our youth and that inexperience that keeps coming back to bite us every single game. Just for a fun fact here, this is our 9th straight loss to Ohio State, and this is our 8th straight loss by 20 or more points. But this one, like I mentioned, was a little bit different. The game was the score definitely showcases an ass whooping, but we weren't completely out of it. A lot of our mistakes weren't, I don't want to say unforced, but they were unnecessary, I think is a better word. Like, we fumbled twice in the red zone, and we had an interception dropped in the end zone. And then right after each of these mistakes, we would give up a touchdown or give up a big run. So we'd kind of be right there, and we just couldn't capitalize. And one of the biggest things like that kind of messed us up in this game and kind of killed our momentum was that bad punt going into halftime. We basically gifted Ohio State a touchdown. Like, we gave them great positioning, and we kind of set them up going into half. So that's just a momentum builder, and it kind of deflates your team. But I'm going to touch a little bit on Aiden. He started off pretty hot in this game. He completed his first 6 throws, and I don't know if I think he was 7 for 10 or 8 for 10 on like the first drive. But whenever we had those turnovers, it kind of just undid all of his good, like the good momentum we were building. And he only threw 1 pick this game, which is an improvement over the past few. I believe he had 3 last week, if I'm remembering correctly. And then he also had that fumble. He had a fumble in the red zone, but it wasn't really his fault. There was like a face mask it was a really obvious face mask that got missed by the ref. So that kind of pissed me off a little bit, because we're already losing the game, and like mistakes like that and misses like that just it just adds to that burn a little bit. And then I just kind of want to talk about him as a whole as the season continues to progress. He has 5 touchdown passes with 8 interceptions, and being a rookie sophomore like QB, like a lot of this was to be expected, but that's not gonna cut it like moving forward. And that doesn't encompass all of his touchdowns, because he's also had like rushing touchdowns, but he has to clean up the interceptions. Like, he's averaging about like close to 2.5 a game, and just a lot of them are just unfortunate, and they come at the worst times possible. But I want to cut us a little bit of slack, because we're dealing with the injury bug a little bit. We lost our 2 starting right guards, so our O-line is kind of taking a bit of a hit. And then onto our defense, we just were not getting to the QB. Like, we were just letting him, Will Howard, letting him be comfortable back there. He was throwing a lot of short routes and getting the ball away quick, but we just weren't applying any pressure. Like, he had nobody back there. We had no sacks, I believe, in the game, and it's unfortunate, especially like losing 2 games in a row. And one of the big messages that the team was talking about in a lot of their post game was to not take this one too personal, shrug it off. Losses happen. And I'm just hoping we could come out next week and get a win, because 3 losses in a row would kind of derail the season a bit. And I don't know, we're kind of getting off our track a little bit. So I think we need to lock back in, refocus a bit, and come out a lot stronger next week.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, honestly, like, I think that I wouldn't say that another loss would derail the season per se, because, I mean, next week y'all play Oregon. And to be honest, like, looking at y'all's schedule in the future, Those are like your three hardest games outside of Illinois and Michigan. So I mean, I
Michigan.
think it was to be. Yeah, we'll see how the Michigan game is, but Oregon's. I mean, the AP poll says they're the sixth best team in the country. So that will definitely be a tough opponent in the Big Ten now. So I mean, I don't think the loss column necessarily is indicative of like the team's like ability to progress, and I think that they probably are still making strides. It's just like hard to showcase that like on film when you're playing, one of the best teams in the country and like the team's still young and trying to learn. So that's kind of like how I would look at it, personally,
Was
because
that
I
too hard?
mean,
Was that
yeah,
too
I
hard
mean,
on
like honestly, like being like a very like I'm a diehard Michigan fan, but being honest, like I have zero expectations against Oregon or Ohio State. So, I mean, especially like coming off of a championship and like knowing that we lost the majority of our starters to NFL, and like it's just like one of those things to where, um, when the team is young and still growing like that, and you get put up against a team that is you're kind of just severely outmatched, especially like you said, because of injuries, because of youth, because of a new coaching regime. Like, I mean, I don't think the score is always necessarily indicative of like a setback in progress, if that makes sense.
that's kind of what I was trying to get at too when I started off. Like we were in the game and it looked competitive. Is kind of what I was trying to say. Like in past years when we've lost, it was blowouts. Like the games were bad. It was ugly. Like this game, like we had so many chances and we just couldn't capitalize. So I just yeah, get to the film room, look over some things moving forward. But I guess if that's something to hang your hat on, that you hung around a little bit with a really good team. If you're trying to find something good out of that loss, that's kind of what I would go with moving forward. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
um,
Uh, yeah.
I'll let you go ahead. Moving forward, we're gonna touch on the Michigan versus Minnesota game. So I'll let you kind of tip that one off. Talk about the score a bit. Where you guys are 2-0 in the Orji era, so let's hope to hope to see the momentum keep building for you guys. But yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, man. So the final score for the Michigan versus Minnesota game was 27-24 with the Michigan W in the column. And to kind of start off with some of the highlights of the game, I think we got off to a very strong start. I believe at the end of the first half, it was 21-3, and the only reason they even scored 3 points at the end of the half was because like they threw this crazy Hail Mary with like 15 seconds left, got down, and then like as like because in college like the ball like they don't really start the game clock until the ball is like set by the referee. So the like special teams unit was already ready to run onto the field. So like as soon as like the ball as soon as like they ran down there, they got set in like 5 seconds and just hurried up and kicked the field goal. Like the kicker just ran out there and kicked it, like no time to set or anything. But they got set like barely. But I don't know. It was very impressive. It was every special teams coordinator dream for sure to get that off in like 2 seconds. I was impressed. Um, but with that being said, Orji looked serviceable in the first half. You know what I'm saying? I feel like he looked comfortable in the pocket. The O line was a lot better in pass pro than they've been in the past couple of weeks. And he converted like a couple of crucial like maybe like two or three long third downs with his legs, which is always good to see. And he completed a couple of like decent throws. Like he had like a nice out route to Frederick Moore for a good gain for like 10 yards. It was it wasn't a short throw. Those out routes are they're longer in air because you had to go because the hashes are farther in college. So I thought that was a good throw that showcased some like potential there, which was cool. Um, and then yeah, honestly, the run blocking was way more dominant than it's been in the past couple of weeks too in the first half, which was good. With Mullins being able to score two touchdowns and Donovan Edwards breaking a long one again, so that was cool. Um, and then on to the frustrating part of the game when we like totally faltered at the end of the game and blew a 21-3 lead because we let them score basically like 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. So but really, what that comes down to, in my opinion, was terrible, overly conservative play calling by Kirk Campbell. I think we went 3-and-out like at least 5 or 6 times in the fourth quarter, and when you keep doing that perpetually over and over again, especially towards the end of the game, that's unsustainable for your defense to be out there like after like every single drive like that, and eventually they're going to get tired. Um, and people are blaming a lot of this on Wink Martindale, but I don't think that they would have had the issue if they weren't as out there. They weren't out there as long as they did. And we just got away from good old fashioned Michigan football, man. They're being too cute with the little weird outside zone runs and like pitches and like the screen pass crap, like instead of just, getting in the I formation, the 22 set with two tight ends and Max Bredesen fullback in there and running the ball up the middle. You know what I'm saying? I think that like honestly like from an efficiency standpoint that like especially with how lackluster offense is, if we can get 3 yards in that every single play, like that's fine, like 3.5 yards. But yeah, like it kind of all started spiraling after Orji threw a pick in like the middle of the third quarter, and then after that it was like everything that could go wrong went wrong. Again, coach not being aggressive enough in the moment. At the end of like I think at the beginning of the fourth quarter, we had the ball for a drive, and instead of us trying to milk the clock some because we could see that it started coming back once it was like 24 to like 14, I think, or 17 ish. They were snapping the ball with like 10, 15 seconds left in the clock instead of running it out, and that was also bothering me. I think that's poor clock management, Sharon Moore's part, or it was Sharon Moore telling Orji, hey, like you need to run the clock down, and him not listening. I don't know which is worse. They're both equally very bad. Yeah, like so that's just something they got to get better at. And Sharon Moore as first year head coach has to be more aware of clock management, as that's a big part of the head coach's job. And I also think he should take back the offensive play calling duties because Kirk Campbell has not been it over the past 4 weeks. And it seems like everything is just way too simple. Like he seems to think that the offense isn't capable of doing certain things, and it's limiting us even more than at least trying to be creative with the skill set that we do have. And I also think that Orji doesn't run the ball nearly as much as he should, given that was like kind of one of his like strengths. And I feel like we don't have plays that are good for the personnel that we do have, in my opinion. So I think that definitely need to get that worked out.
That's kind of where I was gonna start off with my critiques of this game. I'll backtrack a little bit. Like you mentioned, you guys had some dominant run blocking during this game. Khalil Mullins has been showing out this year. He's been great for you guys. He rushed for 111 yards. And one thing that I've kind of been noticing, and you've touched on this, Donovan Edwards, like his opportunities are just becoming fewer and fewer and fewer each game. Like this game, he had 9 carries to Khalil's 24, and which rightfully so. Khalil, he's been hooping, but it's definitely something to monitor a little bit. And then as far as you guys as a team overall, you could kind of tell they still have Orji on a leash, which fair enough because he wasn't their original, like at the top, but he wasn't their original QB, the QB that they had in mind. The system isn't for surely built around him, but they only really let him throw short routes and like little quick passes, and you could tell that I don't know if it's more so him or your coaching, but they don't really trust his arm, which he hasn't had a lot of opportunities to showcase that. And he was 10 for 18, like 10 completions on 18 attempts, which is not the best, but it's solid. He doesn't get a lot of attempts per game. You guys have really been leaning into your Russian offense. And you guys kicked a bunch of field goals to get out to that early lead. I was watching towards the beginning, but I had to step away a little bit. So I had to, rely on my highlights and just going through the film a little bit. But the biggest thing in this game was like not MSU, excuse me. U of M, you guys rushed for 155 yards and passed for 86 versus the Gophers. They rushed for 38 yards, which is their run game was literally non-existent, and passed for 258. And I mentioned this when you first started, but you guys are 2-0 in the Orji era, and I'm gonna keep mentioning that. It's just a funny thing to say. But yeah, you talked about blowing that big lead towards the end, and I think you were kind of right. Like watching the film, how you guys were sticking with that conservative offense. You guys really weren't trying to go for anything. You were just trying to chew the clock a bit, which I get in spurts. But once you saw that they, scored without answering, scored again without answering, you kind of have to step up a little bit and
get
get
a little
out
bit
of
more creative.
Yeah. But I think you guys were doing a decent job putting pressure on their QB, unlike MSU. I might butcher his name. I think it's Max Brosmer when I was looking at it. But you guys had 5 sacks, which is pretty solid. But yeah, your defense continues to be decent up until that fourth quarter, like you mentioned. But yeah, this was a good game overall. You guys have had two pretty impressive wins moving for like impressive. I don't know if impressive is the right word because towards the end you guys kind of let off the ropes, but you guys have had two wins moving forward, and you guys are looking pretty
A
solid.
win is a win.
Yeah, win is a win. Is a win is a win. So I will give you guys that. Um, moving forward, we have the Lions versus Seahawks. This game ended. The final score was 29-42, and it ended with the Lions W. And I'll kind of kick us off with this one. I think the biggest thing surrounding this game, Jared Goff, he was sensational. He went 18 for 18 with two touchdowns. One of them was receiving touchdown, which he said was like the first ever in his football career. I don't know exactly if that's true or not. I guess we'd have to fact check
Yeah,
that, but
he
I'm gonna
was like
take his word
7 years
for it.
old.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna.
the 18 for 18 thing, that's the first time in NFL history that a QB with over 10 passing attempts has ever had 100% completion percentage. So that's pretty cool.
And it's also he's the first player in NFL history to throw for at least 200 yards without an interception. So that was I was watching Sports Center. That was a fact they threw out. So he was great. And Amaron, he threw him a great pass. He said he was the third string QB if I don't know, I'm not gonna use that word, but if stuff hits the fan. So he showcased it a little bit. But our offense has been great moving forward ever since we got through that game where Goff threw 56. I think he threw 56 passes that game. We've kind of cut down big time, which you've seen. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, he had two touchdowns this game. He was amazing. David Montgomery, he had a touchdown, and he had a huge run in the third, which you probably saw all over like Sports Center, ESPN, where he hit sticked Devon Witherspoon, and then broke another tackle, and then took it outside up the sideline, and it was just a great run. Like, he was bouncing off guys. He looked explosive, and it was kind of funny. Like if you watch the play, like after Witherspoon got hit stick, he kind of got up and he was just running like a madman trying to get back in the play. And he ended up, I don't know if he made the tackle, like pushing him out of bounds, but he got back
He
in the
was
play.
he was near the play, but there was a different guy that actually pushed Montgomery out of bounds. But
Yeah,
he
I
was
found
right
that
there
it
though.
was humorous.
Yeah.
Definitely humorous. Pretty funny. Yeah, JMO, he had a 70-yard TD. And I was watching it with some of my friends, and I kind of mentioned this. Laporta, he finally got some big touches in this game. He didn't get a many. I think he had like
Four.
four or
Yeah.
five. But he finally was. They were meaningful catches, like they weren't like a short like 2-yard gain that he's been getting. So
Yeah.
it was kind of nice to see him touch the ball a little more. But I think the biggest red flag from this game was the penalties. Uh, I kind of want to, I guess, worry a little bit. Like Terrion Arnold has been scaring me a little bit. He definitely has to cut down on the penalties. He's like the announcers were talking about it the entire game, but he's just super handsy. Like especially when he gets beat. And some numbers to kind of showcase this. Like he is, I believe, he's second in the league in penalties this season. He has had 8 so far. He has 5 for DPI, 2 for defensive holding, and 1 for face mask. So that's definitely going to come back to bite us in the butt if he doesn't start to recognize that, he's being a little bit too overly aggressive, a little too handsy. And like he definitely needs to cut down a bit if we want to see some things get a little better. And I was a little worried in this game in the third when the Seahawks came out in the second half and their offense was just clicking. And it was kind of like a shootout. Like we would score, they would score. And it was just back and forth until we finally got a stop. But their offense, they looked pretty good up until we started figuring them out a bit towards the fourth quarter. But I was impressed with this game. I think we played a great game. I think our defense was solid. Our offense was amazing. And like he was 18 for 18. You can't ask for much else. He had no picks, no fumbles. And it was a great game to watch. And that receiving touchdown was so like I love all of our trick plays. It put a smile on my face, and definitely everyone else watching if you were a Lions fan.
Yeah. Most definitely. I think honestly for me the one like big thing that I took away from this game too is that this is probably the cleanest that the pass pro has been like literally like the entire season. Um, I think Jared Goff only got sacked 3 times compared to Gino getting sacked about like 4 or 5. So I mean, it wasn't perfect, granted, yeah, but I think that like for the majority of the snaps where he wasn't sacked, there was like little pressure, and he was able to stand and deliver a clean ball. And I think that's why he struggled early on, because I honestly think that Ragnow was playing hurt, like before he even came out and said that he had the partially torn pec. And I think that's why he's been struggling a little bit in the early season. So I think by getting him that rest, starting Glasgow at center, and then bringing Owasika at left guard, I think our pass pro and his run blocking in general has looked like looks very very strong and dominant, like we knew it to be last year. So I think that's a great sign for me too, because again, a lot of our guys in our O line are getting older, so looking for those replacements and viable replacements and like Owasika and guys like that to step up. Some of our later round draft picks on the O line to step up is important. So that's cool. And like you said, Goff made history, caught a receiving touchdown, 100%.
He got
Two
wheels.
touchdowns on the day with 292 yards. He got wheels, man. Like, you can't ask for more. He lay hands too. You saw he posted. He was like lay hands #grit, and then he showed like the clip. It was cool because I was like, dang, like he really did, because the linebacker was like still guarding him. Like, it was not like he was like wide open like how Nick Foles was for like the Philly special or whatever. Like, he literally had to like kind of like, he had to show his lay hands there so the ball didn't get batted away at the end. So that was kind of cool. So yeah, I think I'm excited to see how it continues to go. Like you said, I think Terrion Arnold will get better as hopefully as the season goes along.
Has to.
With yeah, he has to, right? But the metaphor I like to use is that Peyton Manning as a rookie led the league in interceptions, and everybody thought that he was a bust and that he was going to be terrible. So I don't try to make a judgment about the career trajectory of a player until they've at least played like a full 2 seasons, especially like, I mean, everybody was ready to label JMO bust too. I didn't forget about that. Everybody's like, oh, he's a gambler. He hasn't been showing up to camp because he got suspended, and then he was injured like for first year, and like he wasn't going to be a productive member of the team, et cetera, et cetera. And people is making up random stuff about his character too, which is not cool. But yeah, and he's been a great locker room guy, always ready to block for his teammates downfield. And never complained, what I'm saying? Never complained about his amount of touches, and made the most amount of the touches that he's gotten. So I think like Terrion Arnold with his attitude and his demeanor, way he carries himself, I think he'll learn from this and hopefully come back moving forward and do better. And luckily, I think the team holistically is strong enough for it to not be an issue unless it continues to be an issue come playoff time. But he has the rest of the regular season to learn, and I think that especially against like, I don't want to say like lower tier competition, because it's any given week. You know what I'm saying? Any team can beat any team. But as far as like people that aren't like our division rivals, et cetera, like I feel like he has the opportunity to still learn and not like be the end of the world if he makes like mistakes or whatever. So yeah, I think it's for him. It comes down to honestly being more aggressive off the line too. You know what I'm saying? And like, you can put your hands on somebody within 5 yards, and I feel like he's not getting aggressive and pressing enough. And then he tries to give too much cushion, and then when he gets beat, like it's too late and to make contact within that time frame. So I think hopefully they coach that into him, whatever that means to Aaron Glenn or whatever. But
I kind of want
another
to.
thing,
Oh,
go
sorry.
go
I just
ahead.
want to add one thing real quick because we kind of touched on this before we started recording. But his third PI in that game, like towards, I think it was late in the first or it was late in the third, like refs are starting to look out for him because he didn't even really put hands on the guy, but he's starting to build that reputation, and that's just kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like, it's bad going forward because you don't want to start being known as a guy that the refs have to look out for and kind of game plan for, because they're going to give you less leeway, on those 50-50 calls and just all of that moving forward. So that's why I kind of mentioned like he needs to cut down a little bit because it's bad when the refs start sort of not. And I don't want to say they're targeting him because it was PI, but it was a soft call.
Yeah, yeah. His leash is definitely a little bit shorter going forward, which kind of sucks. So yeah, hopefully, like you said, he can kind of put it all together and have a strong performance going forward. So hopefully, like it can kind of cool down a little bit. And it also doesn't help that his like veteran that he's learning from, Carlton Davis, has 4, which is also like the 11th most in the league. So we have the second most penalized guy in the league and the 11th most penalized guy in the league on like the same team out of like hundreds of NFL
We're
players.
the eighth
So
most penalized team. So
yeah. So like honestly, like they're not setting a good precedent or example for him as a rookie anyway, in my opinion. So I think that's also something that the entire cornerback room has to look at together. So yeah. But with that being said, it was definitely more bad than good. I was impressed with how they handled the business, and we hadn't beat. I feel like we hadn't beat the Seahawks in a minute. They've always had our number for the past couple of years, especially in like the Dan Campbell era. So it was good to finally um, put that to rest. So overall, pretty excited for the game and excited to see what they do to moving forward.
I didn't mention I had my Lions shirt on today just to show some
Yes, sir.
camaraderie, showing out a
I
little
don't, I
bit.
don't have it on today, but I wore it during the game. So yeah,
You got the poster up behind you, so good enough.
yeah, saying the fan cave. Shout out the fan cave. Okay, is that all you had to touch on the game, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'll hand it back to you to kind of wrap things up for us.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you all so much again for today for tuning into the Peer Review Podcast. We really appreciate all of your support.
Please make sure to share the podcast with your friends and family, as well as follow us on X at peerreview_pod and on TikTok at peer review podcast to stay up to date with our latest episodes and releases. And we also, especially on the Twitter, have been trying to make it a little more interactive. So moving forward, look for more polls and kind of questions to gauge your guys' thoughts and interests. So yeah, look out for that.
But and one more thing, we touched on the Tigers in our last episode, but as of today, they beat the Houston Astros in the first game away at the Astros home turf 3-1. So shout out Scooble pitched a great game. I don't think they let up I don't think he let up any runs until he got pulled in the sixth inning. And yeah, bats came alive when they needed to in the second. I'm pretty sure we scored all of our runs in the second inning, and then this kept them like it was his lights out pitching after that. We didn't have to score again. So shout out to Tigers, man. I really think we can come back to Comerica Park, and the energy is gonna be electric, and hopefully we can close it out and make it to the next round.
Yes, sir.
But all right, again, we personally monitor all of our accounts, and we'd love to hear feedback. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Do you think Jared Goff is the top 5 QB in the league? Because I do. But if you disagree, that's cool. Let us know. Want us to cover different topics? Let us know in the comments. And thank you all again. This is the peer review. Signing off. It says stopping, but it's not.
Yeah, I can't stop it this time.